Happy Thursday, everyone, and welcome to episode 42 of the Southern Conservative Podcast. My name is Ty. One of the things that we'll be talking about a lot this year is the midterm election. Keep in mind, we're 7 months away from November, and that's an eternity in politics. I want to harken back on some points I made after the special election in Pennsylvania, in which a Democrat running as a moderate and in many ways supporting Trump's agenda defeated the Republican candidate in a district Trump won by 20 points over Hillary Clinton in 2016. And in a district that has many blue-collar workers, a moderate Democrat is much more appealing than a radical progressive. Republicans have their own problems to deal with in terms of party identity. The party of fiscal responsibility, the party of limited government, has been thrown out the window time and time again, most recently with the passing of the omnibus spending bill. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell refuses to budge on getting rid of the filibuster, making just a simple majority necessary to pass legislation through that chamber. That would go a long way to helping Trump accomplish his major agenda items, especially on immigration and Obamacare. I would like to see the Republican Party regain its identity by embracing the values of the Tea Party. The closest thing we have to the Tea Party today is the Freedom Caucus in the House, and sadly, it's only made up of about 30 congressmen. But the Democrats are going to have their own problems as well. We've seen Democrats and Republicans both win different special elections across the country. But when you have elections nationwide, a narrative begins to develop from the party leaders, and the leaders from both parties will have to declare what their major agenda items will be moving forward. I want to highlight some stories that may give us indications as to what the party platform will be for the Democrats this November. Democrats have outlined some ideas to undo parts of Trump's tax reform. And wouldn't you know it, it involves raising taxes. To the Democrats, and frankly some in the Republican Party, the federal government can't get its hands on enough money. But of course, if you're going to pass this outrageous spending bill like the one we saw just a couple weeks ago, yes, you'll need more tax revenue. Why can't the federal government learn to do with less? Where is it written that the federal government always needs to spend more and more money year after year? The plan is to raise the corporate tax on businesses from 21% to 25%, and to restore the top marginal tax rate of 39.6%. So here the Democrats go in engaging in class warfare. Folks, we are seeing the successes of Trump's economic policies, part of which involves the president's tax plan. We have record low Black and Hispanic unemployment. We have just had a story out earlier today that the number of people receiving unemployment benefits last month dropped to the lowest level since December 1973, more than 44 years ago. 1.8 million people got unemployment benefits last month. There's strong job creation out there. And this is positive news. Americans for Tax Reform updates their website daily, and they're keeping track of the number of people who are receiving bonuses and other monetary incentives thanks to Trump's tax cuts. The number of employers offering such bonuses now tops 500, and that is translating to over 4 million employees. All of this by lowering the corporate tax rate. Then there's news from the left-wing magazine The Atlantic. The editor-in-chief, Jeffrey Goldberg, announced the firing of conservative journalist Kevin Williamson over tweets he made about abortion and murder. Here's part of a memo released by Goldberg. Late yesterday afternoon, information came to our attention that has caused us to reconsider this relationship. Specifically, the subject of one of Kevin's most controversial tweets was also a centerpiece of a podcast discussion in which Kevin explained his views on the subject of the death penalty and abortion. The language he used in this podcast, and in my conversation with him in recent days, made it clear that the original tweet did, in fact, represent his carefully considered views. Now, Williamson was only hired late last month, and when he was hired, Goldberg knew of a tweet he made in September 2014 about treating abortion like any other murder, and that the punishment for abortion should mirror that of other types of murder, going so far as to saying hanging perhaps would be in the cards. There was also a podcast around the same time in which Williamson reiterated his views. Goldberg's memo went on to say, "The tweet was not merely an impulsive, decontextualized, heat-of-the-moment post, as Kevin had explained it. Furthermore, the language used in the podcast was callous and violent. This runs contrary to the Atlantic's tradition of respectful, well-reasoned debate into the values of our workplace." Now, I'm sure many would consider what Williamson had to say to be controversial. But there's something that always bothered me. In certain states, if you murder a pregnant woman, you can be charged with murder of the woman and the murder of her unborn child. It's the stance of some on the left that abortion should be legalized right up until the time of birth. We would call this late-term abortion. By that logic, life does not begin until after birth. Okay, so if you murder a pregnant woman, you can also be charged in the death of the baby, but if you're willing to abort your baby, there's no crime. How do you square that circle? The point is, Williamson was hired by The Atlantic to give his conservative commentary to that magazine. Now, I'll be the first to tell you, I don't agree 100% of the time with every conservative commentator. I think it's important for conservatives to stay true to the underlying principles of conservatism, which includes limited government, belief in unalienable rights, which includes the right to life, the rule of law, and free enterprise or free market capitalism. Where commentators differ is in the application of these principles. Williamson provided his own take on abortion and what the punishment should be. That's his opinion, and that is what he was hired for. And that is what he was fired for. This is similar to the boycotts you see of conservative journalists and commentators, and the left definitely has it out for the hosts on Fox News. The most recent victim was Laura Ingraham. She came under fire for a tweet she made about David Hogg, who has been a superstar of the left in the wake of the Florida school shooting, not getting accepted to UCLA despite a remarkable grade point average. Now, Ingram didn't need to concern herself with David Hogg's college prospects, but nonetheless, she's a commentator. And it was for her viewpoints that led to a boycott of her advertisers on her Fox News program. All of this in an attempt to silence her, to get her off the air. Well, The Atlantic went so far as to fire Kevin Williamson for his viewpoints. This follows a trend we are seeing from the left, and in particular the Democratic Party, that no longer appears to be accepting of people who are pro-life. In fact, in April 2017, Tom Perez, the chairman of the Democratic National Committee, said that every Democrat, like every American, should support a woman's right to make her own choices about her body and her health. That is not negotiable. In other words, there is no place in the Democratic Party for pro-lifers. That statement came after the DNC had supported a candidate who had a pro-life voting record, and NARAL, the leading organization in America for abortion rights, blasted the DNC. I just love how Perez says women need to make their own choices about their health, as if pregnancy is some sort of disease. I personally find it barbaric that a society would find it acceptable to murder its next generation, because that's what abortion is. The murder of someone of America's next generation. And for some to find it acceptable to kill a baby just prior to birth when it would be able to survive on its own outside the womb is totally horrendous. And Hillary Clinton, the Democratic Party nominee for president in 2016, refused to denounce late-term abortion. I'm sure you remember the back-and-forth exchange she had with Trump in the third presidential debate on this subject. Then you have the issue of border security. It's no secret the left wants a wide open border and has no problem with illegal immigrants coming into America. And that's because these people are viewed as potential voters in the eyes of Democrats. And get enough of them in here, and you could tip the balance of the Electoral College in favor of the Democrats to ensure you never elect another Republican president, at least in the foreseeable future. Trump recently announced he will be sending the National Guard to the southern border to assist the Border Patrol. He wants as many as 4,000 members of the National Guard to go to the border. And the president said he is committed to keeping the National Guard at the border until the border wall can be built. Well, you have two governors that have come out and said they will not be sending their National Guard to the border if asked to do so by the president. Governor Kate Brown of Oregon and Governor Steve Bullock of Montana, both Democrats. So these two governors have announced they will not be supporting the president in his efforts to secure the southern border. I wonder if Oregon and Montana have any problems with drugs and crime stemming from drugs that have come across the border from Mexico. I suppose that Oregon and Montana do not have any problems with illegal immigrants committing crimes in those two states. These two governors have made it clear that they do not care about securing the southern border. And frankly, they must not care about the security of their citizens. Of course, illegal immigrants have committed crimes in Oregon and Montana, just like they have in every other state in the Union. The voters in Oregon and Montana should be outraged that their elected officials do not see an unsecured southern border as a threat to their states. So let's put all of this together. The Democrats have taken a stance to raise taxes, silence free speech, distance themselves from pro-life candidates, and keep the southern border wide open. How do you think this will go over in toss-up districts where residents of those districts are not uber liberal? Democrats will not be able to pick up seats in the House from districts that have more moderate, blue-collar Reagan Democrats. It would be smart for the Democratic Party to let their candidates run races tailored to the districts they want to represent. But when you have elections nationwide, party narratives begin to form, and it may be hard for Democrats to keep the elections local rather than nationalize the elections. Republicans need to start focusing on nationalizing the elections now, and it can start by touting the points I've made here so far. Democrats are about more taxes, unfettered abortion, wide open borders which will increase drugs and crime. They want to silence free speech with which they disagree. Republicans need to make it about the big national issues and the consequences if Republicans lose the House next year. It means an end to the Trump agenda. I want to remind everyone to please check out my Facebook page. Go to facebook.com/Southern Conservative. That's facebook.com/Southern Conservative. There you will find links to conservative news articles on stories you may not hear about in the mainstream media. Plus, if you follow the news feed, you'll find links to the daily podcasts. Be sure to also subscribe to this YouTube channel and click on the notifications bell. You'll be notified each time a new podcast has been posted. New podcasts are posted daily, Monday through Thursday. I just want to touch on some other points here briefly. Have you seen the attacks coming out against Scott Pruitt, the administrator for the EPA? And it's not just the left cutting this man up. Ed Henry of Fox News had quite the discussion with Pruitt over pay raises given to aides. Pruitt said he had no knowledge of the raises and did away with them, vowing to figure out how they were approved. The Washington Post has come out now with sources saying Pruitt has lied and knew about the raises beforehand. You have reports about Pruitt falling behind on payments for a condo. Let me ask you something. Have you ever heard of the media digging into EPA officials' personal life the way they have Scott Pruitt? Did the media dig up the past of Gina McCarthy, Obama's EPA administrator? So why go after Pruitt? Because Pruitt is undoing environmental regulations imposed by the Obama administration. And when you deregulate, you cut off the power of the federal government. And the left does not like that. Trump has vowed to keep Pruitt, and I hope he does, because Pruitt has been very effective at deregulation. And it's environmental regulation that has to be the biggest hindrance to economic progress in this country. Look at all the hoops you have to jump through anytime you want to build a road or a bridge or an office building. You need to have environmental impact studies. The Obama administration went so far as to wanting to regulate every little body of water down to the size of mud puddles. I mean, where does it all end? You know you're doing something right when the left come out and excoriates you. I hope Pruitt will keep up the good work, and I hope Trump does not get rid of him. The stock market has been extremely volatile lately, with Trump's tweets against Amazon and fears of a trade war with China. Trump has already announced the pursuit of tariffs on $50 billion worth of Chinese products. Late Thursday, the White House announced the president wants an evaluation of tariffs on another $100 billion worth of Chinese products. China has responded to this, saying they will fight back at any cost. Now, I don't want to see a trade war occur with China, and I don't know if we will ever get to that point. China is very, very dependent on the United States importing Chinese goods. Likewise, we are very dependent on China selling us goods. As I've mentioned before, China is a unique case in this global economy. While I'd like to see free trade, China has been a very unfair player by manipulating its currency and stealing our intellectual property. But with this latest back and forth, I'm expecting the stock market to have some massive losses on Friday, unless we get some good news elsewhere. Finally, if you know me, you know I don't go to the movie theater a lot. In fact, I don't really watch a whole lot of movies, period. The last movie I saw in a theater was American Sniper back in 2014. That was the story of Chris Kyle. Well, there is a movie that I'm very interested in seeing, and its release date is on Friday. Chappaquiddick. The story of how Senator Ted Kennedy failed to report a car crash on Chappaquiddick Island, which resulted in the death of Mary Jo Kopechne. Democrats hail Ted Kennedy as the Lion of the Senate. But there's much of Ted Kennedy's life that Americans, especially younger Americans, don't know that would make you think twice of Ted Kennedy. And Chappaquiddick has to be the darkest moment in that man's life. But it's how he got a mere slap on the wrist while a young woman died that's so appalling. And while it ruined his chances of running for president, he went on to be a lifelong senator from Massachusetts. I hope you will check out this movie. I have read extensively the account of what took place that night in Massachusetts and the subsequent events at the inquest, the funeral of Mary Jo Kopechne, the infamous neck brace, and so forth. Last fall, I went to Martha's Vineyard in Chappaquiddick and drove down to Dyke Bridge. I saw for myself the dirt road leading to the bridge, the site of the accident. I drove to the site where the cottage was, where Kennedy and the Boiler Room girls were having a party. I took a ferry across the channel that Kennedy swam across to get back to his hotel room. And it put many things in perspective for me. And I think over the weekend, I'll upload a video in which I tell the narrative of what happened on the night of July 18th, 1969 in Chappaquiddick. Again, I hope you will all see this movie. It comes out in theaters on Friday. And that's it for today, and that's it for this week. Have a great weekend, and I will be posting a narrative of the events that took place at Chappaquiddick.